Hello everybody, my name is Wasim Al-Baba and I am a security engineering intern here at Prelude. Today I'll be covering the first chain of our new theme, GTsST. GTsST is the Russian GRU's main center of special technologies, which involves multiple teams such as Sandworm. Sandworm is an elite Russian-sponsored cyber espionage group active for at least 2 decades, estimated to have started malicious activities back in 2009. This team is part of the Unit 74455 of the GTsST. In this specific chain, we'll be looking at Sandworm's attack against Centreon systems. Centreon is a monitoring application that monitors networks and systems. There is an open source version that exists under the GPL 2.0 license. This version 2.5.2, was vulnerable to code execution through a web shell. The ANSSI said that the first victim was compromised in late 2017, with the attackers continuing to target French information technology providers until 2020. I will now move on to the next section, which we will cover here at Prelude. This section involves their Exaramel Malware. This malware sets a handler for the following signals: SIGINT, SIGTERM, SIGQUIT, and SIGKILL. The handler then terminates the malware process, reads configuration files, and checks if a persistence method is activated. If this is not the case, the malware will attempt persistence. This behavior can be mimicked with Operator and NUMA. It just so happened that Exaramel and NUMA are both written in Go, so this chain will be very similar to the actual attack. Last but not least, I will quickly cover how Exaramel establishes persistence. When the malware starts, it checks if persistence is active. If this is not the case, it scans its running environment and tries to persist. When the malware deletes itself, the persistence will also be deleted. If the malware has started as a non-root user, it will execute a cron job that executes every minute. Otherwise, if it is root, it will identify the startup environment, such as systemd or systemv, and install a service in the name of syslogd. Finally, we have a statement here by Centreon. This statement says that the ANSSI report specifically targets version 2.5.2, which is a release that came out in November 2014. This release is not only no longer supported, but has been not supported for 5 years. And also that the customers that were impacted by this exploit chain had their machines internet facing, which allowed the attackers access onto the machine through the web shell. This video, before I get started, I'd like to mention a few prerequisites that you'll need in order to run this chain. The first one being a NUMA agent already present on the Linux machine of choice. This NUMA agent is required because this chain is NUMA reliant, so you won't be able to use this chain with any other agents unless you go in there and manually edit all the agent instances of that chain. The second prerequisite that you'll need is a vulnerable set UID binary. This could be something like bin bash. So what you could do is, on a Debian-based machine, is sudo chmod +s/bin/bash. That could be an easy way to quickly test this chain out. And finally, you will need to install curl and GCC. These are 2 binaries that you will need to have installed. I understand that some Linux machines don't come with those binaries, so ensure to have those installed before you get started. So once you have all 3 prerequisites ready, as I do here, and you can see this is a low priv shell. So if I do who am I here, you can see I'm the grubsec user in the temp directory. So if I go ahead and click launch chain and type Sandworm, you'll see the chain come up, and you'll see quite a bit of TTPs. The first one, this TTP right here, will find that vulnerable set UID binary that we discussed earlier. If you set multiple, it'll be able to find multiple. This is an easy way to check if you already have one present on your machine. I do recommend doing that. The second TTP will use that vulnerable setuid binary to compile its own malicious binary that will allow it to execute commands as root. From there, we will spawn an elevated NUMA instance and relocate it to a location that will allow us to persist. From there, we'll enumerate underlying system managers so we can identify where and how to set up a service level persistence. And the reason we do that is because in Linux you could have systemd, upstart, systemv, and a few other options that were not covered by Sandworm, and I decided to be as real as possible, and Sandworm only checked for systemd, upstart, or systemv. Otherwise they did a cron job, or I guess they also did a cron job regardless of whether they found one of these three. So that's the route I went in, I guess. So it'll find it, and if it finds systemd to be the service system manager, so it'll use that to set up a service level persistence. Otherwise, it'll use upstart or systemv, and if all three fail, it'll use cron job. But it is able to identify it and pick the right one, and the other two will fail, and then finally it'll set up a cron job persistence. So I'll go ahead and deploy this right now, and we'll see it get to work. The finding part or the finding of the SUID binary is usually just machine based. How long it's gonna take. If you're using low RAM, low CPU, it's gonna take a little longer. But as you can see, the chains went in. The upstart and the systemv ones failed, as the identified underlying machine was systemd. You can also see that the cron job succeeded and that we have the elevated Ubuntu instance spawn in. If I hit reverse shell, we hopefully see root Ubuntu, and if I can do ID, you'll see we have the UID of 0 and the group ID of 1000, as this is exploiting the vulnerable setuid bit. I thank you guys again, and I hope to see you guys in more videos in the future. Thank you.